sure everyone can hear me clearly. Do you hear me fine?
Yep, maybe
Yes.
it can be a little problem. I think it's a little low.
Okay. Is it any better now?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for joining. As Madhu said, my name is Sienam. Easiest way to remember rhymes with Vietnam. I have coached many companies across the sizes of as few as 8 to the size of 3,000, predominantly in the tech space. So the idea today is to take the example of one of those companies and walk you through what are the best practices of writing OKRs and adopting OKRs. I obviously have masked the name of the company, but it is a B2B SaaS company. So I hope that the example is relevant to a lot of you. The way I want to structure this is I would run through the entire thing in probably an hour to hour, 15 minutes. And then after that, I'll open it up for questions. So if you have any specific questions on everything I went through, I would recommend just hold it till the end. And then I will take the questions, which will then help maybe people have the same questions. So it'll be more productive instead of, if I stop every few minutes here and there, it just might slow things down for a lot of people that might not have any questions. So I'll begin to share my screen. I have a deck prepared for today, which should sort of be the guiding point for this conversation. Sorry, I'm just going to back up and start from the beginning. Okay. So very quickly, I'm going to try and cover how to write good objectives, how to write good key results. Also, the most important hack is to drive alignment. And then I'm assuming a lot of you are in leadership roles in the organization. So what do you need to do in order to actually make OKRs succeed?
OKRs, please. Objectives and key results.
I think somebody else needs to go on mute.
We apply now
Simultaneously.
the training.
Now, folks, can I request everyone to go on mute so that we all can hear?
Thank you. So I guess a lot of companies have homegrown practices, especially because they have read practices that come from other organizations when employees come and join you. And everybody's heard about the OKR Superpowers. So I'm just going to quickly talk about those. The first expectation is that these are aspirational. Unlike KPIs or balanced scorecard or even SMART goals, there is an element of stretch. And the idea is that if you aim for the moon, you're going to land among the stars. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. The second advantage is that OKRs are intended to be transparent to whatever extent possible. Now, I know to some organizations feel a little edgy about sharing everyone's OKRs with everyone. But in my experience, where I have seen success is when all OKRs, except for maybe some private OKRs that are the CEOs because they're undergoing funding or some special strategy that doesn't necessarily involve the organization. To that extent, they could be private, but for the most part, as transparent as the OKRs are, you're likely to get more value because the employees connect with a sense of purpose when they can see everything top down and across. The other myth that kind of exists in the world out there is that you jump straight from organization OKRs to individual OKRs. And again, in my experience, you don't get the most value out of OKRs because you really want to drive collaboration. You want to build a culture of we, not me. So yes, your team OKRs perhaps might be owned by the functional owner, but it is super important that when they're crafted, there is a collaborative process and it's not just the org decides the OKRs and then the team owner decides the OKRs and then you tell individuals, okay, fine, go ahead and write your own OKRs. That would completely defeat what you want from OKRs. The fourth one is the hardest one to get, which is ensuring that you get cross-alignment across teams. It takes companies about 3 quarters to get that right, but once you get that breakthrough, you can definitely know that you are an OKR expert at that point of time. The other advantage that companies have gained is divorcing OKRs from compensation. And again, I understand that you have existing compensation practices, performance management practices, and you begin to scratch your head and say, well, if I remove people's goals from that process, how am I going to assess people? And the answer to that, honestly, is that as long as you continue to assess people along OKRs, you are not really going to get quality number one, which is stretch. People are going to sandbag and they are going to set safe goals. So companies are really beginning to shift to a quarterly mode of performance management. And if they do link OKRs to performance, it is almost always the organization team OKRs, not individual ones. So again, it drives collaboration, problem solving, leadership skills, and you're not being rewarded directly for achieving or not achieving your OKRs. Then, of course, there's the question of the cycle. Some companies think that we should go a whole year long with OKRs, and that is definitely not a good practice. You will lose the momentum that you want from a framework like OKRs. So in my experience, early stage startups tend to go for a 60-day cycle. In fact, ByteDance as a company, even though they are so matured in their process now, they maintain the 60-day cycle because they do weekly sprints. So to them, the 60-day cadence holds most value. But typically 90 days is very common. Again, because in tech companies, the 2-week sprints are the more common approach. So they feel that 90 days gives them enough data to drive data-driven decisions to write the next set of OKRs. I'm sorry, I still have someone who has background traffic noise that needs to be muted out. That's much more helpful. Thank you. And last but not the least, the easiest benefit to reap out of OKRs, if you really, sort of manage them on a weekly basis, and especially when you use a platform like Profit, is the hyper focus that you're going to be able to drive in your team, which does not exist, surprisingly, in a lot of organizations. So in summary, if you are doing OKRs for the first time, the first quarter, you are not going to be able to get all 7. Let's just be realistic there. So it's a good exercise to sort of ask yourself, what is it that we really, really want the most? And drive those 2 or 3 the first quarter. And then the next quarter, follow through on where you were weaker. And by the third quarter, you are going to have your OKRs run like a well-oiled machinery. A lot of organizations have had success with OKRs. I'm sure you all have read about them. And what is really interesting is that a lot of these organizations annually feature on the best companies to work for lists across, Fortune, Forbes, best places to work at, etc. And the reason the employees in those organizations cite for saying that this is a great company to work is not because they have ping pong tables or beer or yoga rooms or other kind of enrichment classes. But the number one answer that emerges is that they really feel connected with the sense of purpose of the organization because they get to have authorship and ownership in the goals of the organization. And that's what the organizations also really like about the balancing of the business outcomes with the cultural outcomes that comes out of the OKR framework, while other goals sort of methodologies necessarily don't offer you both sides of the equation. I think all of you know what the acronym stands for, which is objectives and key results. And they essentially come from the vision of the organization. Typically, when you define your vision, you're probably thinking of 3-year or 5-year horizon. And then you have to start thinking about distilling them down to your OKRs, which have a 90-day framework. So this company that we're going to use as an example today, they are a SaaS company that is a hiring platform. And their objective for 2020 is to become the preferred hiring platform for Fortune 100 companies. Obviously deriving from the vision that they want to simplify hiring across the world. So if you were to summarize what OKRs really are, they're simple, definitely not easy, but simple, and a powerful methodology, which essentially breaks down to 3 things. 1, you really should focus on developing a limited set of objectives and key results. 2, you should be able to drive focus across the organization and individual teams. And 3, it should be a time-bound exercise, which is typically a 90-day cycle. And then you reset the cycle again after 90 days. So the typical the question that comes up is why an O and why AKR? We are so used to writing KPIs and KRAs. They're simple numbers that we measure. Why do we have to do this exercise? And we'll dive a little bit more into it. But the idea behind this philosophy, which, by the way, came up in 70s at an enterprise, Intel, and got famous with Google, is that the most important thing is to drive the strategy of the organization. So the strategy is your big idea, which is where are we going? And it has to have an element of inspiration in it. It has to have an element of ambitiousness in it, because that's the only way your employees are going to feel that you are charting an ambitious territory and they're happy to be or proud to be a part of it. But it's equally important that it's easy to remember, because if it is a very complex, long statement, that's the first moment you're going to lose that connection with your employees. And once you've established what that strategy is, where are we going in the next 90 days, then you need clear metrics of success, which is how are we getting there? And this is where numbers sit. They are specific and they are measurable and they're quantifiable and they're not ambiguous. It's not one person's opinion over the other. You have to have data sources that give you these clear measures and tell you that if you achieve these 6 things, you have achieved your strategy. And the common confusion that happens in organizations, especially at the individual level, is tasks or initiatives get written as key results. And the way to distinguish between key results and tasks is that tasks are, your shorter horizon project sprints that you run in support of these key results. They are qualitative or quantitative in nature. They actually cut across functions. And oftentimes they might even support more than one OKR, right? So for example, if you have a task that says revamp the website, it could actually be in support of several KRs. There could be one which is around awareness and branding, versus there could be another one which is around performance management. And then there could be a third one which is actually coming out of product and you're trying to measure the CSAT. So if you end up writing a task as a key result, the question you have to ask yourself is in the reverse. If we did this, would we have achieved our objective? And if the answer is gray, in the sense that it's, I assume so, then in all probabilities, you're writing a task as a key result. So in this scenario, if I want to be the preferred hiring platform for Fortune 100, a clear key result that I would write is to say, I want to go from 1 million in annual recurring revenue to 10 million. But if I were to host a demo day for HR leaders and ask myself the question, if I hosted a demo day, would that imply to me that I am the preferred hiring platform for Fortune 100? And the answer is a clear no. So by its very definition, it is a task that is going to support me achieving this specific KR, which is then the measure of success for the objective that I have set out. So a very simple litmus test, no matter what stage of OKR writing you are, is you give yourself this, and then you start writing better key results. But the most important part of the exercise is to write really strong organization objectives, because that's the thing that's going to give clarity to your entire organization on what your intent is. And there's an MIT study actually where they studied over 200 companies across different sizes. And it was, I think, 2 years back. And one of the things that came out of that survey was that even at the top to the next level, 51% of the leaders did not understand what the CEO's strategy was. And that's only because there is a lack of communication in what the intent of the organization is. And then that number got much worse. In the frontline leads, only 13% people understood what the CEO wanted or what the organization wanted from them. So there's a lot of time that you should spend in writing your objective. And there are 5 sort of key hacks that are important, and I'll walk you through those when you are thinking about your objectives. So the first question I get is, well, why can't my objective have a number? Why can't I just clearly say I want to achieve this number of sales? And the question I always ask CEOs is, write that and then close your eyes and then visualize whatever number of people you have working for yourself, 20, 200, 2,000. And visualize that all of these people are going to wake up at 6:30 in the morning. They're not going to hit the snooze on their alarm. They're going to jump out of their bed. They're going to race through their breakfast. They're going to get in their car, subway, bike, and rush to work because they feel so excited about your objective. And the moment you give that test to yourself, you will realize that it has no inspirational quality when you start writing numbers like that. So the intent behind the objective, which is your strategy, is also to drive inspiration because you're making people run these 90-day sprints to actually deliver on that strategy. Common mistakes that happens are exactly like how I said, increase revenue 20%. You've immediately disconnected a big part of the organization because they look at it and go, well, that's sales. What's it got to do with me? Equally bad is to write something which is vague. So when you say build customer value, ask yourself the question, is there any organization in the world that does not want to build customer value? And so if that's what we are going to do now, what were we doing before? So it's critical that your objective is a very specific strategic theme for your organization and has an inspirational quality that your employees can relate to it. And then the metrics are very clear in the key results. The second piece is including everyone. There is always conversation about how objectives have to be your highest priorities, and indeed they do. But at the same time, a lot of organizations make the mistake of only focusing on growth-driven objectives. So growth is only one part of your organization. If you start to bucket your organization, for almost all of you, those buckets are going to look like growth plus customer. And then there's going to be the resource bucket, which is your people and capital. And then there's going to be an equally important bucket, which is your operational bucket, which is optimization and excellence. And of course, in today's competitive world, you always have to be innovating. Keeping all of these four perspectives in mind when you write your organization objectives would make sure that you have actually touched every single employee in your organization. So in this scenario, I have not written the key results yet because of course you'll get to see key results as we go down. But if I were the CEO and I said, you know what, my intention is we become the preferred hiring platform for Fortune 100. And I preface that with a couple of sentences explaining why we are chasing Fortune 100. And I send this down to people, they haven't seen the key results. Sales would look at it and go, well, obviously if you have to be the preferred hiring platform, there's going to be a certain, key result over there, which is around revenue. And customer success would say, well, obviously we need to retain the customers we have. So there's going to be a key result that's going to be around that. Product obviously knows that this is a coexisting relationship. If sales has to do something, product has to deliver something innovative, new features, reduce user friction, etc. But then HR goes and looks at it and goes, well, in that case, it just means it's business as usual for me. However, if you were to really balance it out by adding another objective and it said unbreakable backbone, and then if you read these key results, every single team in your organization gets impacted by this. Every single one puts on their thinking caps and go, aha, I see what is expected in the next 90 days from us. What are the organization's highest priorities? And I see how we are measuring them. So write your OKRs and then look at them from the lens of, does it touch every single person in my organization at the highest level? And you don't need to get granular in terms of the key results you write. You need to make sure that the intent will touch every single person. Equally important is balancing growing and run. Again, going back to the same example, a lot of times CEOs or CXOs leadership end up writing growth. But you are where you are today because you have been doing certain things incredibly well. And if you were to lose sight of those things that you were doing well and only focused on growth, the next quarter might become about fixing that. So why not ensure through your OKRs that you have that balance, and yet everybody understands that that balance is the highest priority for the organization. So for example, if you give an increased sales number to your sales team through your key results, where is the clarity that what is the spend that is going to happen in marketing, for instance? Are your operating margins going to remain the same, or are they going to change by virtue of that increased spend? So that clarity of thought needs to come through your OKRs. So the moment I say best-in-class operation excellence, and I have established SLAs for all of my teams, and when I say we need to meet these 100% of these SLAs, then it's clear to everyone that while we are aiming for growth, we still want stability and consistency, and we still want to maintain whatever standards we have established in the organization for its health. Last but not the least, this is a much debated topic, and this is literally up to sort of you, but organizations go two different ways with their objectives at the organization level. Some of them want to think in 1 year horizon, and they say, well, my objective holds good for the whole year, but my key results will hold good for each 90 days. So it's like taking a marathon and breaking it down into shorter sprints. However, certain organizations feel we need to be super agile. We want to be able to pivot every 90 days. So we are only going to drive our organization with 90-day objectives. And both are fine, as long as you remember that your key results should end in 90 days. So this scenario, for instance, is the company that we are talking about today. Their annual objective is to become the preferred hiring platform for Fortune 100. It cannot happen in 3 months, but they are putting measures in place that they will measure as key results over 90 days, and then build on that the next 90 days, and build on that the next 90 days. And then by the end of the 365 days, they should be able to say to themselves, yes, we are the preferred hiring platform for Fortune 100 companies. Versus on the other end, if someone is just going to market, which is like a B2B commerce company that I also work with, they have a very clear mandate. We just want to go to market as a trusted conversational platform. And so this is our objective for 90 days. Once we go to market at the end of the 90 days, then we will develop a new objective, which talks about whether we are building the business or whether we're building the trust of the customer, or are we expanding, to markets outside of India. They want to leave that open, and they want to decide that at the end of 90 days. So that's an important decision to make. And you can have a combination too. So you could have an annual objective, which covers your long-term horizon. And you could perhaps have a strategic objective, which is only for the next 90 days. And then you could bucket key results under both of them. Typically, though, early stage startups stick with strategic objectives because it helps them much better in being agile. Equally important, and it sounds common sense, but oftentimes I've seen it doesn't happen, is your objective should also make the teams understand how to write their objective. If you are going to have to get into multiple meeting rooms with multiple functional owners and their teams and explain to them what your objective is, then it completely defeats the purpose of having an agile goal setting like OKR or adopting a platform like Profit. It should be, I read it and you highlight your intention with a couple of sentences to sort of describe it, and boom, as a team, I understand that this is where we are headed. So in this case, become the preferred hiring platform for Fortune 100. The product team realizes that they have to now go global. They have to reduce user friction experiences that they've had in the last quarter. And so they decide their objective is a delightful way to hire globally. So again, to recap the 5 rules, you basically want to make sure your objective is inspirational. It does not have numbers. Your objective includes everyone and touches everyone in the organization. You remember to balance growth and running, and you choose between whether your objective has a long-term horizon or a short-term horizon or a combination. One objective is long-term, another one is short-term, maybe there's a third one which is also short-term. And your objective should be crystal clear because it should help teams collaborate on their objectives. When you flesh that out, it's going to kind of look like your objective, and then it goes down to your team, and then they end up having their own objectives. So this is a big difference between OKR process and any other process, is that the organization OKRs are clearly top down because you had a commitment to your investors, to your shareholders. There are certain business expectations. So that's non-negotiable. That cannot be collaborative. It's only collaborative between the C-suite. Once you bring that to the next level, though, the mistake organizations make is that they ask the functional heads to write the OKR for the team. The functional heads, again, let me reiterate, are the owners of the functional OKRs for sure, because at the end of the day, you have accountability sit somewhere. But what you want to encourage, if you really want to reap the most benefit out of OKRs, is at that point, it starts becoming a bottom-up process. So if they have weekly meetings with their team, that weekly meeting, instead of being a 1 hour meeting for that particular quarter, becomes a 2 hour meeting. And the team gets to give their input as to what the objective should be. And so they help localize it. And the huge benefit of doing that is that authorship enables ownership. Otherwise, you're always going to be in the enforcement mode. And I hear this again and again from organizations that have adopted OKRs, that I just can't get people to deliver. Well, the reason you cannot get people to deliver is because you ask the team lead and then the functional head and then the manager in between to write OKRs and just push them down. So how is it different from having KPIs or any other method in saying, well, take this, I expect you to deliver on this. And so then it's a half-hearted effort. Fine, I am supposed to do this, so I will do this, but this looks crazy stretch. I don't know if it can be done. And there goes your buy-in. But the moment you engage them, you include them, and like I said, it has to be a tightly moderated 2-hour process by the functional head where you take input and you build the OKRs for the teams. You're going to see a tremendous change in the outcomes of your OKRs. Then if you want to go to the individual level, by all means do. Again, I have 2 caveats over here. If you're just starting your OKR journey, it can be very tedious to go from organization to function, then to sub-function, depending on how many layers you have. Imagine if you're an organization with 6 layers and you are going to cascade from layer to layer to layer to layer, and then you want individuals to write OKRs. And by the way, individuals, they usually own outputs. They don't own outcomes. The whole point of having teams is that the outputs are owned by teams. It can become a very tedious process. And if you really want to use most of the 90 days for executing on your OKRs, you cannot afford to lose a lot of time in everybody sitting and writing their OKRs and then their managers reviewing them and approving them. So my recommendation usually is that if you're starting out OKRs, the first quarter, aim for the organization objective and the number 1 level of your teams and maybe level 2. And stop there, drive OKRs for a quarter and then cascade further down. And if you're a small organization, maybe you cascade to individuals by the next quarter itself. If you're a larger organization, like I said, with 6 layers, you cascade to individuals by 3rd quarter. What that's going to ensure is that the individuals have actually understood what OKRs are, why my company is using, how do we measure outcomes, and how can I write my goals in an outcome-driven language, not an output-driven language. And the second thing is you also want them to limit themselves. I've seen managers insist that individuals write laundry lists of OKRs. You're just going to end up with a list of tasks from that person. Like, try to visualize a UI UX designer who only does wireframes. Now you push this person and you say, you've got to write 1 objective and you've got to write 6 key results. What is it that person can potentially write in terms of an outcome? So limiting what you expect from individuals in terms of OKRs is also very important. In fact, a lot of the organizations, if you can go online, you should read a blog that's been written by Spotify. It's absolutely incredible. And they talk about how they started off with individual OKRs and then they just dropped it because it was such a colossal waste of time. And the productivity of their individuals has actually gone up ever since they've only been doing organization, team, and then sub-team OKRs. But entirely up to you. Whichever approach makes complete sense for you. There is not a Bible out there that says this is the only way you've got to do OKRs and there is no other way. Tool it and tailor it for your organizations. All my request is put some thought into how this is actually going to happen over the next 90 days before you get hung up on this is the way we want to do it. But if you do decide that you are going to localize, agility is super, super important. You want to complete org OKRs down to the last level in less than 2 weeks. So for example, the organizations I'm working with right now, my last check-in with the OKR on the OKRs, I've already indicated to them that by the 15th, the org OKR should have been drafted. I'll take a look over it to sort of help them crystallize it more. And the window between the 16th to the 30th, it'll cascade down from team to team, and those teams would have completed writing their OKRs and finished the validation so that on 1st April, they actually start executing on it. Now, the logical question that follows that is, but then what happens about the OKRs we already have this cycle? Aren't we supposed to be delivering on them till the 30th of March? Yes. However, when you start actually working with OKRs, one of the things that you will realize is that somewhere around 15th of March, teams and individuals are going to be super clear about where their progress is going to land at and what they need to carry over to the next quarter, what new KRs they need to write the next quarter. So yes, they continue delivering on them from the 15th to 30th. In fact, if anything, they put a little bit more muscle behind the ones that are at 60%, 70% mark, rather than diluting their efforts across many, many different KRs. But they're in a very good shape to start thinking about what their OKRs ought to be for the next quarter. And it gets intuitive. The more you do it, more intuitively it comes to every team. At the end of it, though, the most important thing is that organization OKRs cascade down to the team. They collaborate and they write the team OKRs. And if you go down to the individual level, then they write the individual OKRs. The completion of the team OKRs, the team key results, should obviously result in the attainment of the team objective. And therefore, it should result in the achievement of the organization OKRs. It shouldn't be that the team ends up writing their own OKRs, and no matter how great they do at it, it still doesn't meet the organization's requirement. And the alignment piece is actually what is helpful there, especially when you use a platform like Profit. So what do we need to remember when we start writing team objectives? How are they different from the organization level objectives? Very few rules over there. First mistake a lot of organizations make is that teams take the KR of the organization as their objective. And some platforms out there advocate for that, which is actually a terrible idea. And I'll tell you why. Take this example. So if my key result was to go from 1 million in ARR to 10 million in ARR, and if I were the sales team and I went ahead and adopted it, I would just get married to this objective and I would only try to deliver on this. I wouldn't really think about what is the sales team strategy. And it's that strategic thinking which we are lacking in organizations today, because all we do is we create a body of doers behind numbers, is the game changer in OKRs. From having people who are just going to be doing what they are told, you want to shift to a culture where people think about, okay, so strategically, what do we need to prioritize to grow customers? Because at the end of the day, the organization's objective is, a Fortune 100 company, if they had a choice between platform A and platform B, they choose us. It cannot be only the metric of the ARR. There are other things that they could be doing. So when they decide that their objective is grow multi-folds with focus on onboarding, right? By default, the KR of 1 million to 10 million cascades to them because they own it. And of course, the sales head will be the executive owner of that particular key result. But then they also add other key results. And one of the key results that they've added is that they would onboard 75 channel partners. And that thinking comes from thinking about the fact that how can we make this happen fast? We are only X number of people. So wait, there are channel partners out there in the Western and the APAC market. And if we tap them, we actually hit the sales objective much faster. So super important to recap here. The organization key result, which is specific to a particular team, should never become the objective of that team. It becomes the key result, one of the key results of that team by default, but it is never the objective of that team. And if the team achieves the objective, definitely they'll achieve the organization objective. So the other exercise is, once teams have written their OKRs, they should look back again at the org OKRs and say, hey, do we sync up? So in this scenario, customer success writes onwards and upwards, growing marquee enterprises. And then they look at the organization objective and they're like, yeah, that makes complete sense. If we grow what we have in terms of these marquee logos, that we would be the choice of, Fortune 100, because A, we would continue to have business from those we have, and B, we could use them as, sort of a referral or advocacy customer to other Fortune 100 companies. And then operations looks at customer retention and delight and goes, yep, that makes complete sense because we are aligning with customer success and we are aligning with the organization objective. So write and then relook back to the org OKRs to see that you have alignment. Same rule as the organization objective. You want to inspire your smaller teams. You want to make sure you keep numbers out of the objective. They have to be simple and easy for people to remember. So for example, sorry, I just jumped over there. I'm going to jump back to a few examples that we had. Give me 1 second. Going into this direction. Yeah, so if you notice, one thing that is common across the language of all these objectives is that it can be easily remembered by every single person of that team. So again, going back to my original example, if that person was to come to work on a Monday morning, they would not struggle to remember that we are driving awareness, so we are category leaders, or we are driving good financial hygiene. Super easy things that people can actually remember for 90 days, connect with, and then deliver on the key results. Otherwise, what is likely to happen is that you will have these OKRs sitting on some spreadsheet and then sitting on the profit platform. You're going to be constantly nudging people to update the status, and there's going to be so much of it out there that people will just be like, I don't understand why I have to adopt it. I don't understand why I have to do it. Continuing on the inspiring and memorable, like I said, limited words in the objective, and then very clear key results, which are metrics of success. Anybody can remember the top of the fingertip. You get more complicated with your language. You get, into the whole world of, increase, decrease, sort of, and go on and on about it. And then you write a whole bunch of key results that look like a laundry list, overly granular. And the teams just look at it as a chore, not something that they can remember and deliver on for the next 90 days. Very important in light of annual objectives is that if the organization has an annual objective, which is going to last the span of 2020, their key results at the organization level will end in 90 days. Therefore, even for the teams, the objectives and key results will end 90 days. And the reason being that you want the agility from OKRs. You want teams to make data-driven decisions to pivot on their objective every 90 days. If they get married to an objective, especially, in taking the situation today, right? For example, with this whole coronavirus situation, if you have decided a strategy and you just cannot even have events, you cannot meet clients, there's so many activities that get restricted. Imagine you are married to this particular strategy for the entire year. All that team is going to do is throw up their hands and go, oh, well, because of coronavirus, we could not do X, Y, Z. Versus if they're able to look back at what happened this quarter, especially this particular month, because of this sudden act of God, they are able to plan better for next quarter to take a completely different strategy and still achieve the objective for the team and achieve the objective for the organization. Just to give you an example here of the company we're talking about. So while the objective of be the preferred hiring platform is going to go till the end of 2020, the organization has a key result, which is reduced time to hire by 10% for financial companies and IT services companies, which will end June 30th, 2020, this is for next quarter. And product team has in turn 2 key results for their objective of delightful way to hire globally. And one is obviously cascaded down directly to them. And the other one, this one they've created, saying identify top 10 workflows using analytics and reduce them to 3 clicks or less. Even that ends on June 30th. So I know that the platforms offer the option to set different dates, but it is incredibly helpful if all teams have the same time-bound date. If everyone's OKRs are synced for each quarter, and by the way, the quarters don't have to be syncing with the calendar quarters, but somehow it helps people in working with it better. So if everybody had it going from Jan to March, April to June, July to September, and October to December, the whole organization syncs up. Everyone is on the same page that we are measuring everything together, and therefore our interdependencies also have to be delivered on at the same time. Otherwise, if different teams set different timelines, you would have mayhem. You would have a dependent team being told by the primary team, well, our OKR is going, from this date to this date. So we're only going to deliver on this date to this date. So keeping everybody on same schedule, syncing up everybody's 90-day calendar has tremendous benefit in terms of the simplicity and the alignment that you would get. So now that we understand what it takes to write good objectives, what does it take to write good key results? This is the complete opposite of the objective. If a key result does not have a number, then it is not a key result. And I know there is a lot of discussion that happens around qualitative key results, which is fine. A lot of organizations end up writing qualitative key results, but then when you say build a MVP, the A is 1. So there is a number there. It's just that thinking of it with that lens, and then of course breaking that into milestones would help you make sure that you are measuring the key results on a regular basis. And the question you have to ask yourself when you're writing key results is, does this mean success? If the answer is not a clear yes, keep refining the key result again and again and again until you hit it right. First time, it can be a very awkward, very painful exercise. I assure you, get it right the first time. From the second quarter, painless, because everybody's understood what is the concept of measuring success in your organization. I use an acronym which my customers find very helpful, especially because everybody knows SMART goals, and honestly, they're like kind of meh. So I like to call them smarter goals, and I'll take you through how this acronym sort of breaks down. But it's specific, measurable by numbers, audacious, real outcome, not output, time bound, which I actually spoke about a lot right now, evidence driven through data, and rewarding, meaning 90% of the teams are plugged into their OKRs. So specific. One of the challenges that happens within teams is A, they love their acronym. And the second is that they tend to use relative terms. Now, going back to the value of transparency of OKRs, try and visualize that if you are someone who has written, you're in finance and you've written a KR, which is around, retain 30% EBITDA. And you go ahead and hire a fresh college graduate to do your social media strategy, and that person sits in the marketing team. And when they come on, you give them the access to the OKRs of the organization. And then they go and read this finance one. They don't understand this term at all. The first thing that is going to happen is they're going to be like, it doesn't matter to me. Anyways, this is finances. I'll just look at marketing ones and let me see if I can understand those. So thinking about the fact that if you are actually going to make OKRs transparent, every single person, almost like a fifth grader, should be able to understand every team's OKRs, helps you eliminate acronyms, and also helps you eliminate relative percentages. If you go ahead and just put improve revenue by 100%, I don't know what your baseline is. But if you clarified what your starting point was and what your ending point was, which is 1 million to 10 million, then it is super easy for every single person to understand, that's where we were, and that's where we need to get to in the next 90 days. So that specificity is, write it and then look at it again and say, is it specific enough? And then you will, sort of elaborate on that. The second one that stumps a lot of teams is, how do you measure frequently? Again, the Profit platform, sort of gives you the option to measure weekly or monthly, and inevitably there are certain things that you perhaps, cannot measure on a weekly basis. You might have to measure on a monthly basis, but challenge yourself. Because if you really want to get the value out of the OKR process, you're going to want to drive the cadence on a weekly basis. If you're going to want to drive the cadence on a weekly basis, then you cannot have people coming to OKR check-ins and saying, this doesn't change for 90 days, or this only changed at the end of the month. I will be able to report it then. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking to look in the front view mirror. You're not looking to look in the rear view mirror. If you were, then you would use any other methodology. So challenge, especially at the team level, challenge the team to think about measures that are lead indicators. So if my key result at the organization level was to win 10 Fortune 100 logos, any of us who have been in the enterprise business, there is absolutely no way this is going to move forward on a weekly basis. Maybe, if you have a CRM, we probably see it moving slowly from opportunity to, prospecting to whatever. But by just measuring actually winning the logo, it's going to take you maybe months. So what happens? No progress on that key result. But the moment you look at your previous quarter's conversion ratio, and that tells you that if you were to make 60 outbound sales qualified if you had 60 outbound sales qualified leads, that could potentially mean that you could win 10 logos. You have introduced a lead indicator, which you can measure on a weekly basis because you can build on your sales qualified leads. And also, if you can beat that number, then you know that your chances are getting better. So thinking about strengthening organization key results, at least at the team level, with key results that can be measured on a week-to-week basis, can boost your OKR process tremendously. Then is the controversial question of the stretch. There's all kinds of content out there online. Some say, well, if you put stretch, people don't get it because everybody comes from the world of 100% achievement is important. And then some say, well, just go for the audacious goals because, stretch is what makes OKRs. True that, but you are not going to just put stretch for the sake of putting stretch and expecting a windfall to happen. You need to obviously know what your thresholds are. Like if you decide to give sales a ridiculous target, but they cannot hire people in the next 3 months, you're basically setting them to fail. And so when that disappointment comes around, they're going to think you're crazy and they're not going to believe in your stretch OKRs anymore. So it's important to keep what was the last quarter's performance. What is your resource planning look like, people and money for this quarter? What are the targets that you have in mind? And what is that out of the box thinking that's going to happen? If you can show them that path as the leader, then you bake that 25 to 30% stretch. Now, there is also a scenario in certain organizations where certain things are like do or die. You just cannot waver from them at all. You can incorporate a few key results that you can call as commit key results, meaning this requires a 100% achievement, but don't overdo it. Have a few that should be 100%, but for the most part, if you can bake the stretch, keeping all of this in mind, go for about 25 to 30% stretch, but reassure your team that a 70% achievement is actually a good outcome. So again, in the sales example, they did the math and they knew that the 7 million in annual recurring revenue is something they can probably achieve in the next quarter. But they realized that if they were very nimble in adding channel partners, 10 million is a good stretch key result to have. So that's the key result they went and added to strengthen this and then bake the stretch in it. And so they know now that 7 is a good outcome, which is a probable outcome, but we are going to go for 10, which is a possible outcome. Then the whole challenge of the real output. This is where a lot of the struggle lies at the individual level and even at team levels when people have not done OKRs before. So even if you think about yourselves, I mean, almost all of us, when you start planning your day, if you do on a Sunday night, almost all of us tend to think about it is, I have these many meetings to attend, I have, these many emails to respond to, we have this data that we need to put together for a presentation. All of those are nothing but just output. And the moment you start planning your week around those outputs, you're never going to really prioritize what matters the most. The moment you start thinking with an outcome-driven hat, you are not going to necessarily respond to all those 200 emails. If you see that they can wait, you will have the priority emails that you need to respond to. You will also start scheduling your meetings differently. So having an OKR structure where you are really measuring outcomes on a weekly basis helps all of us as individuals to prioritize what we do. So some examples over here. If we are product engineering, oftentimes they'll try to write a key result saying perform bug testing in each sprint. That is first of all, just a task. There is no clear measure of success over there. And also, even if you did perform bug testing, it is not going to necessarily help me win Fortune 100 logos. Then it probably improves where people think about it, okay, how can I make this better? And also, of course, it depends on what stage of your product engineering cycle you are in and growth you are in. But let's say they reduce the ratio of bug leakage to user acceptance testing from 5% to 0%. That's already way better because they're talking about they have a start value, then they have a target value, and they are going to be able to measure this on a weekly basis. But if they had the ability to, meaning if the releases were going to happen to the customer within this quarter itself, an amazing key result would look like less than 5 bugs reported by customer after implementation. Because at the end of it, that's the outcome you want from your engineering team. Similarly, marketing will host the annual hiring event. Sure, you can host it, but that doesn't guarantee success. It definitely doesn't tell me if Fortune 100 logos are going to, be a part of our business. So then they improve it by saying, okay, 50% representation by target accounts, meaning if there are 100 people attending, 50 are going to come from these Fortune 100 companies. Even that does not tell me, yes, that creates an opportunity for sure, but that doesn't tell me that I'm going to be successful. What would be really a challenging key result to write is that I bring X number of sales qualified leads. Now I'm putting, my neck out there and saying that I'm going to have such an amazing event that it is going to result in conversion. Similarly for HR, I think HR and legal and finance are the ones that struggle the most with OKRs because they tend to write a lot of processes as their key results, which are nothing but tasks. If you take the same onboarding process and you redefine it as getting an average score of 4+ out of 5 for onboarding process of new employees, now you're really testing your onboarding process and measuring success. Did you even create a process that new onboarders are even liking? And how do you improve if they're not? Now, time bound is something I spoke about a lot before, so I'm going to kind of skip on that, but try to sync up everybody's time to the same date so you have success with measuring. Then comes the evidence-driven piece. Again, platforms like Profit kind of make this easy for you, but at the end of the day, it doesn't happen in every team. So for example, product teams have this easier because they use Jira or Zoho for their sprints, and then therefore they're able to measure from that work stream how much they have progressed on the key result and then capture that on the platform. But you'll find a lot of other teams don't actually use anything. Again, taking the example of HR, legal, or finance, a lot of their work is just running on emails, in their heads, in their conversations. One of the massively successful things that I've seen with organizations that succeed with OKRs is that every team has a data stream that measures the outcomes for the key results, and they have a work stream where teams can collaborate and plan the output. So, again, in the case of Profit, you could potentially use the task board for people to collaborate. But if you already have other platforms that you're using, it's super important. This is the role the functional owners have to play, is to make sure that the integration of those work streams happens with OKRs. And second, people also understand how the OKRs and the work stream connect. Especially, for instance, if you are in tech space and you have Agile and you're running these sprints, how does your KR then connect to the epic, which then connects to the stories, and then that connects to the story points? And then finally, when you get the outcome at the end of each sprint, how does it feed into the percentage of the progress of the key results? Obviously, when I coach organizations, they sort of ask me to work with them and build on it, but I'm not going to be there with them forever. They have to be autonomous. So this responsibility falls on the functional owners is don't just go ahead and write a key result. When you write the key result, also map the roadmap of how that key result is going to be measured, where is it going to be measured from, and is everything connecting seamlessly with each other? So again, in a sales scenario, let's say you have the key result of win 10 Fortune 100 logos, and then you have Salesforce where you manage your sales deals pipeline. So that tells you, okay, we're qualifying this many, but then we're prospecting one, we're reviewing another one, and we have closed one. Then comes the dark space. What is happening with the prospecting and the reviewing piece? The way you can kill the dark space by making sure that you have a task board. So if I were doing this on Trello, I would make my 3 teams, which is sales, product, and legal, collaborate with each other. And so on the prospecting piece, if I went to the link of that Trello board, I would be able to see that, okay, we are developing a white label product for Microsoft, and product is doing their bit. Sales needs, the moment product does it, sales is going to set up a follow-up meeting and demo it to the stakeholder. So I know, that's what that prospecting one is looking like. And then when I want to see what is going on with the review one, is it actually going to close? Is it not going to close? I have, again, a collaborative board where I can see legal says they're reviewing the contract, they've sent a red line copy to everyone. And so sales is saying, well, we're just kind of monitoring the situation. And the moment the redlining is over, we'll get the signing done by the Adobe team. Complete clarity. It eliminates meetings, it eliminates emails, it eliminates a lot of back and forth, it eliminates slowdown in the progress of OKRs. You are going from your OKRs to your data stream, to your work stream. They're flowing into an endless loop. This takes time if you don't have all the tools in place. Oftentimes, I see people get very caught up in, should everybody use the same tool? No, you cannot. You're already forcing a change management on your team with OKRs. You cannot force a change on them by saying, well, now you got to all get on the same platform. Product teams and engineering teams are going to be more comfortable on Jira and Zoho. Don't want to push them out of there, but ensure that all teams have some cross collaboration process and a task board that they're working off. This happens a lot in early stage startups where they start with some KR and they have the notion that the team is going to work on that KR, but mid-cycle, the functional owner gets some other request from some other people and decides to pivot. When you have OKRs, you really have to resist the urge to do that. Be more attentive to the cadence you want to set. Go for 60 days if you feel you want to pivot more frequently. Go for 90 days if you think that is the right rhythm for your organization. But don't commit the blunder of writing a bunch of OKRs and then have your team say, well, my work is actually two parts. There is the OKR work, and then there is this other work that we have to do. That's just bad news. So for example, here, if the organization key result is to reduce hiring 10% for these particular industries, the 6 KRs or 5 KRs the product team has written, 90% of the product team's time should be going into only these 5 KRs. The balance 10% is for your business as usual stuff, things that we just have to do because they're hygiene, their emails, their meetings that are just inevitable in a corporate environment. But they should not be having a whole bunch of other things to do that have nothing to do with these, because then your OKR process is going to mentally get defeated in the minds of your team. So when you get those key results down, which is specific, measurable, audacious, real outcomes, not outputs, time-bound, evidence-driven through your data streams and work streams, and rewarding for the team, this is what your hierarchy would look like. And again, I emphasize, even though your functional owners own the key results for sales, marketing, product operations, fact of the matter is they cannot deliver it on their own. So at the end of the day, it would really benefit you to position those as team OKRs and not as his or her OKRs, because then they have no desire to deliver on them. And from there, then they can percolate down to being, individual OKRs, which are very limited, trying to limit them to wildly important goals and not writing a laundry list. And then, of course, the individual KRs may or may not fully align with this, team. So, for example, some organizations that I work with, they have individuals write 3 key results, of which 2 are aligned with the team's work, and 1 is a personal one. And that's perfectly fine. So you have the organization OKRs, there's complete alignment from there to the team levels. Then from the team, you have limited alignment of the individual's OKRs. And then they have 1 or 2 which are, sort of individually just their own. But that's fine because, you want them to have a fully fleshed OKR. There might be something about learning over there. There might be something about doing something different over there. As long as they can accommodate for that while delivering the team OKRs, that's perfectly fine. So here's the fully fleshed out example of the company that we sort of just, ran through. They have 2 objectives over here. One is to become the preferred hiring platform for Fortune 100. The other is an unbreakable backbone. And if you notice, they have very limited key results under them, which are the highest priorities. And realistically speaking, when you limit them is when people can actually deliver them in 90 days. When you start writing too many, you are going to dilute the effort of your organization across many, many different things to deliver, and you are not going to get the value out of OKRs. Then if you go down to the teams level, you can see they have very clear objectives, and each of them have also limited themselves somewhere between 3 to 6 key results. Again, even at a team level, in 90 days with 530 work hours, this is, if you can get people to get behind these and deliver more than 70%, that means your OKR process is working incredibly well. Another set of teams, which is your product engineering, operations, Similarly, they have written limited OKRs, which align 100% with the organization OKRs. And that's what they're going to chase for the next 90 days. So let's get into the tactical piece of it now. So we go through this exercise where, the leadership spends 2 hours and writes the organization OKRs. Then we cascade it down. Each of the teams and the sub-teams spends 2 hours each looking at the organization OKRs, and then they write their OKRs. What needs to happen? Obviously, there needs to be achievement of those, and achievement will only happen if there is alignment from the bottom all the way to the top. How are you going to get that alignment? If you write hundreds of KRs, you're going to spend hours poring over them, trying to seek that alignment. But if you can really buy into the concept of less is more and limit yourself to 3 objectives at the organization level and 2 objectives to the team levels and no more than 6 key results, then you can really get that hyper focus and alignment. And by the way, if you have less than 3 key results for an objective, it's a weak objective. Then you really have to look back at your objective again and say, maybe it is a sub-objective of another objective and we've just chosen to break it up and write it separately. It should just be merged together. But at just at a very, very high level and at a very, very elementary level, I just want to introduce to you the idea that in neurological science, there is a concept of working memory and there is a concept of intelligence. Children are often accused of the fact that they cannot remember more than 5 things at a time. But if you think about people who work in your own teams or even about your own self, fact is, even none of us can remember more than 5 steps at a time, which is because intelligence evolves over time, but working memory, unless you're someone who plays something like Sudoku every day, remains constant, which is why OTPs are 4 or 6 digits, which is why telephone numbers originally used to be 5 digits, and now we have the area code, and then we still limit them because we want us to be able to remember those. You have to apply the same logic to your OKRs. You may have a great platform to manage them, but at the end of the day, you want the organization's C-suite, you want the team owners, you want the team members to come and plug into work on a Monday morning, remembering on their fingertips exactly what they have to deliver in the next 90 days. So now we come to the implementation part. We've got all this written down. So one of the things that works incredibly well for me and the organizations I coach is to create an organogram of roles outside of the traditional organization roles. Because this is essentially change management. You are trying to change business outcomes, you are trying to change cultural behavior. And if you think that if you were to sort of sit down and write OKRs and get a platform in there, you are going to have this incredible revolution happen in the organization, it's unlikely. It's almost like saying, I'm going to buy a Peloton bike because it has live streaming of, exercises and it can be collaborative, and I'll put that in my bedroom. If you don't change the behavior, you're not going to get on that bike and use it. It's just going to sit in the corner of that room for the rest of your life. So what has worked well for me is a very clear executive sponsor. Of course, it helps when the CEO is the executive sponsor. But if you think that your bandwidth is limited or maybe you travel a lot, your chief of staff or chief of strategy or COO makes an incredible executive sponsor. But they have to remember that they're going to have to carve out a significant amount of time in the first quarter to communicate for OKRs. When I say significant, means things like writing kickoff emails, having those big conversations, incorporating OKRs in the leadership flywheel, because the biggest difficulty in change of behavior, believe me or not, is not in the team level, but is at the leadership level. And then making the time for all hands meetings, town halls, to recognize and reward the progress of OKRs. It's that sort of communication. The time has to be carved out separately for that. And then business owners have to own the responsibility of defining the OKRs quickly. If you have a business owner who's like, I'm traveling this week and then I'm traveling the following week, I don't know if I can get with my team and we are going to be behind. And so you have all these other teams that have completed their OKRs in less than 2 weeks, but you have this one function that has not even got started. That's it. That's one wheel off the car. And so it's important that they understand that their role is the agility in aligning the business OKRs, driving the focus every week on measuring them. And as I said, making sure that your BI integrates with your OKRs. So there's a clear understanding of those beautiful dashboards that we look at. How do they ultimately add up to our OKRs? What is the measure of progress? Then the other thing that has also worked well for me is having an OKR Sherpa and an OKR champion. The Sherpa, as the name describes, is the person who helps people climb to the top of the mountain. This is the drudge work. And in plain speak, it is basically being a calendar Nazi. So ensuring in the beginning that the teams are actually having weekly check-ins, the leadership is actually having weekly check-ins, a monthly progress summary is being sent out, a 90-day retrospective is being scheduled where everybody attends it. Somebody's got to own that. And typically, unfortunately, it falls on an HR partner just because they're so good at it. And that's what I've noticed in organizations. But if you have this person hold this role, then people don't necessarily sort of slink out of those calendar routines that are needed. And OKR champions is another interesting concept that has worked very well for me. Is change cannot be driven just from the top. If you think about an ocean, you want to create the energy. The tide just going in one direction cannot be the catalyst of change. It's when the tides go in both the directions. It's the cold current meets the hot current is when you really get the more optimum amount of energy. So champions are peers in the team who should become subject matter experts of OKRs. So there is a little bit of enforcement push that comes from the top, but there also needs to be an enablement push that needs to come from the bottom. So these are people who are generally highly liked in the organization. People are comfortable coming and talking to them, sharing their reservations about OKRs with them. And these are the people who drive the nudging for OKRs, because remember when I said, if the functional owner owns the OKRs and then he or she is nudging the team members to deliver on them, there's going to be no excitement for it. But if you have a peer in the group who says, guys, come on, we really can do this. What are you talking about 70%? We can really shoot for 100%. Tell me what you need. I will escalate it to the business owner. If you can find people like that in each of your teams, that is amazing. And over a period of time, they can also become the coaches for OKRs, right? So you need someone to constantly coach new hires. They develop the ability to do that. So as soon as a new person comes into the team, they onboard the person onto the platform. They explain to them why we do OKRs, why is it so important to our CEO, why is it important to our team, why do you have to have a strategic thinking hat? A lot of those interesting conversations that need to be happening in the organizations can be had by someone other than the functional owner who may or may not have the bandwidth. So I drive it that way. If you are a small organization, you could probably have fewer champions. And another easy way to think about it is just the way you identify a Scrum Master. You do that because you need someone to drive the agility in your sprint. It's the same concept over here. You need a champion within the peers to drive that agility in the team. So now that we've written OKRs, we want to doubly ensure that we validated alignment. Again, do good platforms like Profit already provide you that opportunity to do so, but there is some element of eyeballing that is required. So looking at the team, whatever team that is, if the champion is at a sub-team level or a level below that, wherever the champions sit, they look at the OKRs, what the teams have set, and just double look at the organization OKRs to see that there is a top to down or down to top alignment. Functional owners have to take the responsibility of looking at the OKRs of other teams and making sure that there is an alignment across teams, or if they have multiple teams reporting under them, looking through the entire chain to see that there is alignment. And last but not the least, the CEO must always do a bird's eye view to make sure that there is a top to down involvement. Assuming that the functional owners have got it can be a big mistake. So how do you do the top down alignment check? As I had given an example before, there will be some organization key results which will downstream as is. You want to make sure that the teams have written other KRs that strengthen it, and make sure that they capture the highest priorities of the team. So it seems like common sense, but you'd be surprised the kind of mistakes that happen in organizations. A simple key result of saying go from 1 million ARR to 10 million ARR, if it had to be broken down into regions, sometimes people don't even do the basic math. Or sometimes it'll just these two numbers which had stretch baked into it over and above the organization OKR, which is a bad idea. So just figuring out that 10 adds up to 7 and 3 is kind of super important. Then how do you validate cross-alignment? There are a lot of teams that need to have cross-aligned KRs, because if they don't have it, how are you going to deliver your KRs? So simple examples, the relationship between sales and marketing. Now in this scenario, sales says that they need to get to 10 million ARR. Marketing needs to have obviously some key results around performance management. But the more important question to ask is, if they did capture these sales qualified leads, does that ratio even match up to the ratio sales needs? Because if it doesn't, then sales basically has to nudge marketing and say, hey guys, your KRs don't align with ours. We actually need 200 sales qualified leads through content, looking into what happened last quarter. So driving alignment just to ensure that they have aligning key results, but the numbers also align up for you to be able to deliver your key results. And this is an exercise that definitely takes some amount of mastery. A lot of organizations struggle with it the first quarter, but once you get the hang of it, then it comes super easy. And then the CEO sort of gives, like I said, a bird's eye view to make sure that everyone is moving in the right direction. There is no particular team that has set objectives that do not align with the organization objectives. So for the same example that we used before, if I were the CEO and I looked at everybody's objectives, sales, marketing, product, finance, I'd give it 2 thumbs up and I'd say, yep, they all get it, that we need to be the choice platform of Fortune 100, and they all are doing what needs to be done in the right direction. And if I were looking down under the, cascading down the teams, I want to take a look there. I would look within the product team and I would say, yes, they all have it figured out, that in order for product to make the user experience better, they all have objectives that align well with it. So now the CEO signs off and says, right, we're all good. From April 1, we're going to start delivering on these OKRs. What do we do then? So you have the profit platform. You obviously go there and you've captured the organization and visual OKRs. And then you have also taken care of the fact that you have either done, integrations with other platforms that you work, or you have linked them, whatever is the right approach for you. So you've got your backbone sorted out for being able to sort of drive this on a weekly basis. And, whatever work streams you have, they're in place, but the integrations are put in place. So now you want to communicate to everyone that this is a 90-day process. You want to drive alignment and accountability at the team levels, and you have to build a culture for it. Then you want to make sure that everybody understands that these have to be measured weekly. Before you do that, you want to make sure, especially if you have a milestone approach, that everybody understands what the milestones of progress are. Simple question, if I were to ask all of you on this call, how do we add up to the number 9 with 2 numbers? Each one of you will think different numbers in your head. 5 plus 4, 7 plus 2, 6 plus 3, 8 plus 1. That's what you want to avoid. So on the platform, you want to capture very clearly your shared understanding of how progress is to be measured. The progress of the key results will feed into the progress of the O and give you the percentage of progress on a weekly basis. Now, the only way that can happen is if you are going in on a weekly basis and updating that information on the platform, or you have integrations that update the platform. Either ways, you want people to adopt the platform. So good practice is, by the end of Friday, people should have updated the progress of their key results. Another exercise that I do, which you don't have to do, but has worked well for my clients, is to take a confidence check. The reason to do that is because not all key results progress at the same pace every week. Some will be slow starters because there's a lot of pre-work, but you want to know, why is this a 0 for such a long time? But if you get a high confidence rating from the team member who's managing it, then you know, aha, okay, so this is kind of going to pick up pace after a few weeks. The reverse is also possible. You have a key result that is progressing incredibly well, but if the team member who owns it gives it a low confidence rating and tells you that there are external dependencies, maybe there is some legal hold up in becoming an impaneled vendor of a particular company. So while this is progressing well at this point of time, there's going to be a slowdown 6 weeks down the road then you know, okay, some of us have to jump into action in order for us to be able to do something about this KR. So it's a check and balance mechanism that I have built in and works well for me. But at the end of the quarter, you're only grading the progress that comes on the platform. Sorry, I have to step out. Will you be sending out the deck? Yes, a short version of the deck would go out. So OKR check-ins, that's the last piece I want to touch on. People believe we've set great OKRs, we have adopted a great platform, and the platform has all the bells and whistles for the integrations and check-ins and all. Would we be able to not just drive OKRs that way? But simple answer is no. Again, you're asking for a massive culture change in the organization. You are going to have to demonstrate commitment to that change by taking a very important step called OKR check-in. The OKR check-in is nothing but adding a commit meeting at the top of your weekly meeting whenever it happens. If it happens on a Monday, if it happens on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, bake this top of the meeting. Why top of the meeting? Because again, neuroscience tells us that people are only attentive first 20 minutes of a meeting. So while you might be having an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long meeting, the attention span is going to wane. If this is your highest priority, then it should also get the most important time in your meeting. You want to ensure that people have already captured key result progress. So therefore, you use the champions to nudge people. So a champion would basically send a Slack message on Friday to everyone, reminding him Friday morning, saying, guys, 6 p.m. today, everybody's key result progress captured. And then champions will also take a quick poll on the confidence rating based on sort of what I just talked about earlier. Sorry. And then blockers. The one important piece is functional owners should resolve blockers within 24 hours. If you don't do that, you are not going to, it's a stretch goal for yourself. If you want people to achieve stretch goals, no matter how complex your work environment, you may not be able to solve it, but you should offer resolution to the blockers within 24 hours so that people can actually move forward on the key results. So that's one last step that is super, super important. And this should be part of even the leadership meeting. I will stop now. And if there are any questions, I will take those. Anyone?
Hello.
Hi.
Yep. So you guys have any questions? We'll be happy to answer.
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, I have 1,000-odd questions to ask, but it's superb. Thank you very much, and we will be getting this soon. So let us go through once again this go through again, and seems it's very interesting, and got everything. Only thing we have to practice. We have to start practicing, as you correctly said. It will be the starting point. Will be little hectic, as we are not very much, into it. But we love to start with and get things going. Hope you can help us in time.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, there is no Bible out there for it, right? There is platform, but there is your own tooling and tailoring and learning from your own mistakes, and that cannot happen unless you actually start doing it.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I think Rafa has also got a question.
I see a question that has come through the chat. The question is, do you think it is good to have OKRs directly linked to the compensation? Yes, I did touch about it, a little bit early on. Now that you've gone through this, you can understand that if you're going to put the concept of stretch and you link individual OKRs to compensation, no one's going to stretch, right? And also, if you ask them to write OKRs, they are going to sort of shy away from writing OKRs that put more light on the work that they do. So organizations that adopt OKRs typically adopt, again, a completely tailored framework to themselves. What they tend to do is they, again, reward for the behavior of we rather than me. So the theory is a percentage of the component is the organization OKR achievement. Then there is a percentage for, teamwork. And the individual is typically actually assessed on culture and behavior. And if you think about it from an HR person's perspective, if I'm assessing an individual for leadership skills, problem solving, teamwork, and they actually demonstrate all of this, in all probabilities, they did help achieve the team and the organization OKR. Versus if I start measuring them for just their output, they are going to put incredibly safe things and
so one of I replied to him, and one of my friends, one of my colleagues, my former colleagues is a friend of Dilang. So that girl.
Did that answer the question? I think, and that's a very interesting point there, that innovation research-based function whose success is not a guarantee, especially where OKR is linked to compensation. Exactly. You want them to really innovate and you want them to stretch themselves. And, if you looked at the OKRs of this organization also, one of the KRs was to set up a excellence project with, moonshot projects in it. Why would anybody work on them if they had compensation related to it? But if their compensation was related to the overall organization OKRs and for the behavior that they demonstrated and their commitment to the culture of the organization, it wouldn't be a challenge at all to assess the person. Any other questions?
First of all, great presentation. I have a quick question. So you mentioned earlier not to, have key results become tasks, and that leads to. Basically, you were mentioning don't have key results, become tasks. Do you have any suggestions on avoiding that or on making that less of a,
So, first time organizations, right, a lot of key tasks do find their way into the OKRs. And the moment you ask the individual or the team to write the anatomy of that key result, you tell them, okay, so what's the start value? What is the target value? How are you going to measure progress on a weekly basis? And how does it define success for the O? They're forced to rethink it. But if you don't ask those questions, then they'll just write a bunch of tasks. Like I said, for example, something like marketing. You could say revamp a website, host a demo event, build 6 customer advocacy testimonials. That's just a whole bunch of tasks. You ask them the question, well, how does revamping the website meet the organization's objective? Then they'll start thinking about what metrics they should actually be capturing. Is it daily active users? Is it engagement rate? Is it engagement time on the blog? And then the real measures start surfacing.
Got it. Understood. Okay, thanks.
Hi, Sienam. I'm Hong Hui here from Vivo Private Limited. So I just want to check with you another thing because when we try to implement OKR, right, we seems to have a lot of problem because our employees seems to think that by setting a lot of OKR or doing OKR is additional chores for them, and they couldn't align all these tasks or KRs right with their daily work, daily tasks.
Right.
Want to hear some suggestion if I'm facing this kind of problem.
So if you're facing that, may I ask you how many O's and KRs are you setting at the org level and the team level?
As of now, the team level has their own OKRs, and then organization has one annual OKR only.
Got you. So obviously, first, like I said, if you want to have an annual O, that is fine. But then you make sure that your key results are sort of 90 days and they are no more than 3 to 6. But I think what is very important is that the functional heads, when the teams are writing their O and the KRs, once you go through that drafting session, right? So you have the 2-hour meeting where you tell everybody. First of all, one of the mistakes that happens is when the owner writes the O's and the KRs, he or she does not have a full view of what everybody in the team does, right? So he tends to just look at the organization OKRs and says, aha, that's what's wanted from product. So we will write this O and we will build up, these KRs. But like my last piece of key results was that it has to be rewarding for the entire team. So he or she does not do that. Now, let's say you mitigate that by having a 2-hour meeting and you have the team participate. Then when you do that session of writing O and the KRs, the last half an hour should be asking about every single team member, is your work reflected in here? And so if that person says no, either the business owner should know it is reflected here and show them how, or if it is not there, then it is important to make sure that it does get captured as the key result. So you've not lost them. So that exercise is really important. And that is also where having champions in the teams helps. Because when you try to drive the OKRs for the first quarter, the champions are the ones where people will come and tell them that, look, I don't see anything for me over here. This is just additional to my work. And the biggest problem happens is in the product engineering and QA teams. Because the way OKRs are written, they basically just pick up on a couple of priorities, but they don't pick up on the work that is actually intensively done by the product engineering, QA, DevOps teams, etc. So really taking the time in that first 2-hour meeting when you're setting team level OKRs to understand what everybody does, how can that be converted into outcomes, and that it finds its way onto the team KRs will make sure people start making the connection. Does that help?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
So Sienam, I think there are a couple of questions on chat.
Yeah, so I answered our first question about the compensation. There's a new question, which is, should individual OKRs be visible to everyone, or does transparency stop at team OKRs? That's a very good question. Yes, you could potentially stop the transparency at team OKRs. Like you correctly said, an individual might have a personal KR they might write, and they might want to keep it to themselves, between themselves and their manager, which is fine. But definitely, if you want to have the full superpower of OKRs, at least make sure that every team can view within them the team's OKRs and across teams OKRs, and most importantly, the organization OKRs. Okay, then the question is, sometimes employees complain that this OKRs are quarterly with stretch targets and linked to performance compensation. They're unable to maintain work-life balance. I think it goes back to the original question. That is exactly why you don't want to link it to performance and compensation. But also, if you are having that situation often and with a lot of employees, then look at the stretch. I did talk about it, right? Stretch is not just because I'm an ambitious CEO and I want my teams to stretch. Stretch has to have an element of reality. What did we achieve last quarter? So if I take a very simple sales example. If we achieved 1 million last quarter, and we know that quarter on quarter we grow 10%, that means we can do 1.1 million this quarter. And we feel that if we introduce 2 more features in the product and we hire channel partners, we could potentially go to 2 million. Then that should be your stretch. If you're putting like 5 million, obviously your employees are going to feel pressured and they're going to think you are unrealistic. So that upward management has to also happen. Teams have to give feedback to the C-suite as to that stretch was crazy stretch. It wasn't realistic stretch. But definitely don't connect those 90-day stretches to performance, because people will then say, A, it is unrealistic. B, I am never going to make that incentive or bonus. So I don't understand why I'm here. Okay. Is there another question there? Madhu, can you see another question there? I'm not seeing it.
Is there any recommendation on how many personal OKRs should align to team or org level OKRs, if any?
Okay. So again, if you really take the theory of OKRs, I think at an individual level, it just boils down to 1 objective and 3 KRs. If you make people write more than that, they're not going to be able to deliver on 90 days. Because first of all, they're going to be contributing towards the team OKRs, and from that team OKRs, they'll have some KRs coming down to them. So in summary, 1O and 3 KRs for an individual is probably the best case scenario for getting the optimum results in 90 days. Now, the only scenario in that can be that 2 are aligned to the team KRs and 1 is personal. Or maybe you are the kind of organization where all 3 are aligned to team KRs and there is not a personal one. Maybe you just do that as a separate, like an annual goal setting exercise for your growth, etc. Really up to how you manage it. But 1O, 3 KR, all can be aligned to the team, or maybe 2 are aligned to the team and 1 is personal. Okay, then there's a question on how to set OKRs for paraprofessionals, people who do routine work like doing finance entries or payrolls. Good question. So business as usual departments like HR, legal, finance, you don't want to force them to write a laundry list of OKRs. Typically, it comes down to very basic things like financial hygiene, like optimization, or developing better processes. So in fact, their OKRs can tend to have more of a qualitative aspect. Sometimes it's things like 100% compliance to SLAs or SOCs. Sometimes it's about maintaining accurate and timely reporting so that the EBITDA or GM remains the same. And the way they measure it is because they have interdependencies on other teams. So are they getting all that information before the month end and they are able to publish it beginning of the month? HR covers things like onboarding, employee satisfaction, writing the employee manuals. They also have sometimes a little bit more, evolved ones like trainings, if they have L&D as a part of it, training for first-time managers, reskilling of people in the organization. So we have a cross-skilling of people. Sometimes they have, things about sort of skip jumping, mentoring. Those are a little bit more advanced when they fall in the L&D space. But the business as usual ones are more around optimization, excellence, compliance, and typically they end up with no more than 3 KRs. And all the work that they do ends up rolling into those measurable outcomes. Any other questions?
I think Sienam we'll end the session here. It's already 7:30. So, I'll request everyone, if they have any further questions, probably they can, drop us an email straight away, and then we'll reach out to you with the appropriate answer. And Sienam, thank you so much for, such a wonderful presentation. It really helped. I'm sure, we all have learned a lot during this, and some of these questions raised by, the participant. I'm sure even these questions must have helped others because, as you rightly mentioned in the starting, right? I mean, they may end up having more or less similar kind of questions. And I think this is one of the reasons that people are like, maybe you have answered during your presentation, or probably, they have already asked. So, I think if anyone has any questions, I'll again repeat, please drop us an email and we'll reach out to you. And Sienam, thank you so much for your time. And we'll accordingly, plan to either share, as you said, shorter version of your presentation if anyone is interested.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.